what are the advantages we have in an inheritance? So we have 5 kinds of advantages in the inheritance. So out of that you can write any 3 in order to get 3 marks. At that time, how many classes may going to be derived from this base class? Only one time the content will going to be reached to the derived class without having more copies of this base class. That is what virtual base class is all about. When we are acquiring the properties of one class to another class, that scenario or that process will be considered as what? Inheritance. Hello everybody, a warm welcome to one and all. I welcome you all to the revision session on chapter 10, that is inheritance. I am Rohini TS, lecturer, Department of Computer Science, Vidhyaashram Pre-University College, Temple of Excellence, Mysuru. So you can see the blueprint of this chapter here. That means what is the marks distribution of this chapter. So when it comes to the chapter 10, that is inheritance, you can expect one 3-mark question from this. That means that is for 3 marks, and you are going to get one 5-mark question, and that is for 5 marks. So totally you are going to get 2 questions from this chapter, and totally you can get 8 marks if you study this chapter. Yes, as we already discussed regarding this inheritance, I just wanted to give you a brief introduction regarding this inheritance chapter. That means what are the important topics that you need to read from this chapter. So as we all know that, first I have to understand the concept called inheritance. That means we have to understand the definition of inheritance, right? So when we are dealing with this inheritance, then it will going to be mandatory in order to learn the definition of a base class as well as the derived class. So these 2 definitions are important for 3 marks questions, and it will be important definition anyhow. So base class as well as the derived class. So after this we are going to learn with how we are going to create this derived class. That means you have to understand the syntax of this derived class. For example, we have a base class and I wanted to create a new class from a base class. Then I have to declare and I have to define this derived class. How we are going to do that? That syntax is also important. After that we have to learn with a visibility mode, isn't it? So why this visibility mode is important? Somehow it will going to provide a security for the base class content to the derived class. What needs to be accessed in the derived class and what should not be accessed in the derived class. That we are going to understand with a concept called visibility mode. So in this we have public and we have private, and also we have a protected mode. So after this, very important concept, that is levels of inheritance. That is also considered as what? Categories of inheritance. How many categories we have in inheritance? Totally we have 5 types of inheritance. One is single inheritance, and we have a multi-level inheritance, and we have multiple. So we have a multi-level as well as we have multiple. Then we have hierarchical inheritance. At last we have hybrid inheritance. So these topics are very important. Surely you can expect it for 5 marks, and definition of all these can be important questions. And also we are going to deal with what do you mean by abstract class and what is virtual base class. So these are the important topics from this chapter. Mainly you have to concentrate on the levels of inheritance. That means we have a 5 levels of inheritance. Out of this you can expect any one for 5 marks. Like a question will be like, I will discuss regarding the important questions of this chapter. Mainly what and all you have to understand from this chapter: what is inheritance, what is base class, what is derived class, and how we are going to create a derived class with a syntax and some example. Then what do you mean by visibility mode? There will be a chances of asking this visibility mode for 5 marks or 3 marks also. What do you mean by visibility mode? Explain any one mode here, okay? Or else mainly this levels of inheritance. For each level you have to understand its definition and you have to write its syntax along with one example. So that is what important regarding this chapter. And then what do you mean by abstract class and what is virtual base class? We'll see the important questions now. That is, as I told you, we are going to get only 2 questions. One is for 3 marks and another one is for 5 marks. Now we'll see about the 3 marks important question here. Mainly, give any 3 advantages of inheritance. Here also, please make a note. We are going to deal with the advantages of inheritance. Very, very important question for 3 marks. So here also make a note here. Advantages of inheritance is also very, very important concept. Mainly, somehow it is all, most frequently it has been asked for 3 marks only. So that what are the advantages we have in an inheritance? So we have 5 kinds of advantages in the inheritance. So out of that you can write any 3 in order to get 3 marks. So reusing existing code, faster development time, easy to maintain, easy to extend, and we have a proper memory utilization. Most frequently asked question. So you can consider this as a very important question from this chapter. We'll see the next question. Discuss multi-level inheritance. As I told, we have 5 types of inheritance, no? So out of that, you can expect any one kind of inheritance for 3 marks. Like there will be a chances of asking a question like explain single level inheritance with an example, explain multi-level inheritance, explain hybrid inheritance. That means what? You have to get prepared with all the levels of inheritance, so that you are going to get 8 marks together, I can say. Why? Because you can get the same question for 3 marks, and also there will be a chances of having that questions in the 5 marks also. So that you have to concentrate on the levels of inheritance without leaving that concept here. So what do you mean by multi-level inheritance here? Multi-level, as the name indicates, for example, when you consider you, your father and your grandfather. Consider your grandfather as a grandparent. That means they will be considered as a parent class, that is base class. And consider your parent as a derived class. So you just imagine only grandfather and you consider only your father. Okay, so at these 2 levels, we are going to consider this grandfather as a base class and this father as a derived class, right? But when this father has a child, at that time, consider either son or daughter. So they are going to be the derived class and they will be the base class. So it will be based on the levels to levels. So we are inheriting the features from this class, and this class inheriting the features from another base class. That means what? Indirectly, this derived class at the next level is indirectly acquiring the features of their main base class. That is multi-level inheritance. So here also, derivation of a class from another derived class is called multi-level inheritance. So you have to write the syntax and you have to write one example. This is the schematic representation of this multi-level inheritance. We have a base class, we have a derived class 1, derived class 2, up to n number of derived class we can have in a multi-level. So it is first level, it is a second level. If I going to create one more derived class, that will be the next level of a multi-level inheritance. What is the example? As I told, we have 3 classes A, B, C. This will be the grandfather, this will be the father, this will be the child. So it will be, this grandfather will be a base class, and this B is the intermediary class, and this C is the derived class. So if I am going to create one more class called D, at that time this will going to be derived class one more. That is what we are going to deal with this multi-level inheritance. Important question. And also we'll see explain virtual base class with an example. What is this virtual base class? I just wanted to give you an example. You consider here I have a class called A, and here I have a class called B, and here also I have a class called C. Okay, then I am going to create one more class with the help of this BC to D. So now you just analyze this image. I have 4 classes, which are those A, B, C, D, right? So this A will be considered as a base class and B and C will be considered as a derived class. And I am going to create one more derived class with the help of this B and C. I am taking the features of B as well as the C, and I am creating one derived class called D, or new class called D. So when I am inheriting the features of A to B, so you just imagine I am inheriting the features from A to B. So at that time, whatever the content is there in A will going to be copied to B. Next, so I am inheriting the features from A to C. At the time also, whatever the content that I have in a A will going to be copied to C. But when I'm having the features of B and C, then there will be a chances of getting the copy of the content of an A to the D will be twice. That means we are going to get the content of A to B one time and A to C another time. If I am having the features of B and C to the D, at that time I am going to get the content of A twice in the D. So that means what? We are going to get a multiple copies of A than one time. That means we have to make this A as a virtual base class. At that time, how many classes may going to be derived from this base class? Only one time the content will going to be reached to the derived class without having more copies of this base class. That is what virtual base class is all about. So you can see here, when two or more objects are derived from a common base class, we can prevent multiple copies of a base class being present in the object which is derived from those objects by declaring the base class as virtual when it is being inherited. So now which class I wanted to make that as a virtual? I have to make this A as a virtual class. At that time, the content of this A or a object value of this A will going to be copied to B and C only one time. So when I am inheriting the features from B and C to the D, at that time the content of this A will going to be given to the D only one time. We are reducing the multiple copies of a content of an object of the particular class called A. So that I am going to make this base class as a virtual base class. So that such a base class is called as virtual base class. And how can we achieve this? With the help of preceding the base class name with a keyword virtual. We are going to use a keyword called virtual. So if I make this base class A as a virtual, then it will going to give the features only one time to the derived class. So here you can see the example. We have a class A and class B. We are inheriting the features from A to B. So here what I am doing, I am taking a virtual as a keyword. So if I am taking that virtual as a keyword to class A, at that time the content of A will going to be retains in D only one time. So that class B, and we have class C. So this class A is also inheriting the features from A, but I am making this base class A as a virtual, so that when I am inheriting the features from B and C to this class D, at that time only one copy of A will going to be copied to this class D. So this is what the example here, whatever the dashed line we have, that will going to be filled with some of the data as per the requirement of user. This is how you are supposed to answer for this question. Next, we'll see the next question. Mention the types of inheritance, explain any one. So what are the types of inheritance we have? You need to understand, dear students. So types of inheritance will going to be, if you are listing out all the types of inheritance, that will be for 1 mark. So if you are explaining any one, then that will be for 2 marks. So already we got to know regarding the types of inheritance. We have a single inheritance, multi-level, multiple, hierarchical, and we have a hybrid inheritance. So when you wanted to explain anyone, you can choose anyone out of this type of inheritance and you have to explain. If I am taking, for example, if I am taking single and multiple inheritance, at the time I have to write the definition of each type of inheritance and the schematic representation of each type of inheritance, and then along with one example. These are the content that you are supposed to write in order to get complete marks whatever allocated for this question. I hope you understood how you are supposed to write the answer. So now we'll see the next question. Define base class and derived class. Important question. So what do you mean by base class? What is derived class? So when I'm dealing with the inheritance, we are moreover dealing with two kinds of classes. One is base class, derived class. So just imagine you and your parent, right? So when you are imagining you and your parent, at that time you are going to inherit the features of your parent to you. That means your parent will be the base class. Whatever the features that you are acquiring, then you will be considered as a derived class. So if a class is giving its features to other classes, or if a feature is inherited by another classes, will be considered as a base class, super class, or a parent class. If I am inheriting the features from another class, then I will be considered as a derived class, child class, or subclass. That is what we are dealing with this question. Base class is nothing but it is a class whose properties are inherited by. You should never miss this keyword called by. So the content of this base class will going to be inherited by another classes, so that it will be mandatory to write this by. So remember, we have a base B, here also by. Okay, so in that way you have to remember, you have to do some tricks while writing the answer in order to get a complete marks. Okay, so it is a class whose properties are inherited by another class. Okay, and then it is also called as superclass, and it is also called as parent class. Next, derived class. This derived class is what? It inheriting the features from. From you have to write that keyword here, so that it is a class that inherit the properties from base class. So when I can say any class as a derived class, it has to inherit the features from another class or a base class, and it is also called as subclass, and it will be considered as a child class as well. This is regarding what do you mean by base class and what is derived class. So these are the 3 marks question. Now we'll see about the 5 mark question. What is inheritance? Explain its types. So I'm taking together in order to make you understand what is the types of inheritance that we have in a inheritance here. So inheritance, what is the definition of inheritance? It is the capability of one class to acquire or to inherit the properties from another class. So when we are acquiring the properties of one class to another class, that scenario or that process will be considered as what? Inheritance. And what are the types of inheritance we have? 5 types: single level, multi-level, multiple, hierarchical, and we have hybrid. Then what about this single inheritance? As the name indicates, single inheritance is what? Only one base class, only one derived class. So you can consider this A will be the base class and this B will be the derived class. Whatever the features that I have in a A will going to be copied to B. So you can see here, single inheritance is a process of creating a new class from an existing base class. So we are just having only one base class, only one derived class in a single level. And multi-level, already I have discussed regarding the multi-level, isn't it? So that derivation of a class from another derived class, you should never miss this keyword, derived. We are deriving or we are creating a new class from already derived class. Okay, so that will be considered as what? Multi-level inheritance. How I am going to write the multi-level? So consider I have A and I have B and I have class called C. Right? So this C is inheriting the features from B, this B is inheriting the features from A. So indirectly this C is getting the feature of A. So that is multi-level inheritance. Next, what we have? Multiple. Multiple. Remember, multiple in the sense what? There will be more than one base class that will going to be used or will be created only one derived class. So base class will be more. Number of base classes will be more than one. You can take base class in number. Here, a class can be derived from more than one base class. Remember all these keywords. So if I have a more than one base class for a single derived class, that is multiple. Okay. So if you consider a prince or a princess, they are going to acquire features from both a king and queen, right? King and queen are the base class and princess or a prince will be the derived class. So if a class can be derived from more than one base class, that will be considered as what? Multiple inheritance. This is how the schematic representation that you are supposed to write. So next we have a hierarchical inheritance. Hierarchical is a tree-like structure. Only one base class and we can have any number of derived classes. We have only one base class and you can have any number of derived classes here. Derived class 2 and we have derived class 3 and I can have any number of derived classes here. If a number of classes are derived from a single base class, how I am inheriting the feature? I am creating one number of classes. I can have any number of derived classes from a single base class. That will be considered as what? Hierarchical inheritance. Then what is hybrid? It will be a combination of any kind of inheritance. Rest of all the 4s can be combined together and we can have a inheritance. Moreover, it will be a combination of hierarchical and multi-level. Hierarchical in the sense what? This is how. So if I am creating this one, then it will be the derived class 4, let me consider. So this is the hybrid. That means we have a hierarchical as well as I have a multi-level as well as I have a multiple. If I consider this will be the level 1, 2, 3, or this will be the level 1, 2, 3, or else if I have this one also, this will be another level. If I consider multiple, more number of base classes to a single derived class. That means hybrid in the sense combination of any kind of types of inheritance in order to have this hybrid inheritance. I hope you all understood regarding this types of inheritance with its schematic representation, and one example is necessary. So next, what is single level inheritance? Write a suitable programming example. So this is what asked in the board paper, very important question. So you have to learn only one program from this chapter, that is single level inheritance. So already we know the definition of single level inheritance, creating a new class from an existing base class. So here I have taken a programming example. We have a class called base and we have some of the data members called roll number and name, and we have a member function called read, and also we have one more member function called display. So this class will going to be done. That is, we have a class called base, and I am creating one more class called derived. So we have only one base class, only one derived class. How to create a new class? I have to use a keyword called class, then derived. So what is the derived class name here? That is derived, and we have to use a colon that indicates that we are inheriting, so that it is important line. We are inheriting the features. So from where I am getting the feature? From a base class. Base is a name of a base class, and public is nothing but it is a visibility mode. The content, whatever we have in a base class, public content can be derived to or can be acquired as it can be inherited to this derived class called derived. And here also I have some of the data members called M1, M2 and T, and we have a member function called read1. Read is a member function of base class, and read1 is a member function of this derived class. And also we have one more member function called display1. So this display is a member function of base class. Display1 is a member function of derived class. And to which class we are supposed to create an object? Very important. So to which class we have to create an object? That is for the derived class. Okay. So which is the derived class here? That is derived. So how to create an object? First I have to take a name of a class, then I have to give the object name. So here object class name is derived and object name is obj. So with the help of this obj, I can access the content of a base class. So in the base class, I have a read and display. In the derived class, I have a read1 and display1. So with the help of the object of this derived class, I am accessing the content of base class as well as the derived class. So when I am writing this obj.read, at that time the control will going to be reached to this location. So it will going to take a roll number, name, everything. So in the same way, we are going to deal with object.read1. It is a member function of a class called derived. So this is a member function of a base class. This is the derived class. What it means? Whatever the features or whatever the data members and member functions that I have in a base class can be inherited to derived class when we are dealing with a single level inheritance. And close the fuller braces, which is a closing of this main function. This is how you are supposed to answer this kind of question. We'll see the next question. Explain visibility mode in inheritance. What is visibility mode? Already I told you regarding a visibility mode. We have a public visibility mode, private, as well as we have a protected. So when I'm writing a visibility mode, so if you consider this example here we are going to write a visibility mode of a base class. That means whatever the content we have in a base class, how it can be derived to derived class. So that is regarding what? Visibility mode. So it can be of public, private or protected. So the private data of a base class cannot be inherited. Which data cannot be inherited to derived class of a base class? The private data of a base class will never going to be inherited to the derived class. And also we have public visibility mode, we have a private visibility mode, and also we have a protected visibility mode. So when you are writing the answer for this question, at that time you have to write regarding all the kinds of visibility mode. If it is publicly visibility mode, what are the content of this public will going to be used or can be inherited to the derived class? We'll see now. So if an inheritance is done in public mode, so public members of a base class become the public members of a derived class, and protected members of a base class become the protected members of a derived class. I can't inherit the private content of a base class to the derived class. So public will be considered as public in a derived class, and this protected members will be considered as a protected in derived class as well. In the same way, we are going to have this private and protected. So in the inheritance, if it is done in the private mode, public and protected members of a base class become the private members of a derived class. Whatever the content that I have in if I am inheriting the features of base class as a private visibility mode, at the time I can't inherit the private content of a base class to derived class, but there will be a chances of having public and protected content in the base class that will be considered as a private in the derived class. And we have a protected. So if the inheritance is done in a protected mode, public and protected members of a base class become the protected members of a base class. So here you can see the tabular column. That means if I am taking a visibility mode as public, private and protected, what will going to happen of a content of a base class will be a derived class. This is regarding this chapter 10, inheritance. It's all about today's session. I hope you all understood. Let me meet you in the next session with a revision of further concepts. Until that, keep learning, keep on growing. Thank you.